hot take, because y'all, the community in which the Western world lives in shuns disability, it's really hard for you all to spot when you're around somebody who has special needs. For instance, most tech bros, the entire STEM industry is full of people who have special needs. These are the kids who would have been pulled out of classrooms because they cannot function socially. And then you guys wonder why they keep looping around eugenics. Most of Stanford, okay, so Stanford is the reason why most kids in public schools can't read, because they took away phonics and started doing sight reading and all that kind of stuff that didn't make any sense. So somebody who is cognitively delayed in their intellect. Okay, this is why when they stopped using the R word, now all of a sudden everybody's illiterate and everybody can't read, because everybody stopped using terms, whether they were poorly used or not, in the system of colonialism. Every word is a weapon, honestly. But when we stopped functionally being capable of spotting and recognizing and existing in a world with people with special needs, which for America, that was when white people came here. That was when people stopped being able to function in a world with people with special needs. Because in colonial spaces, before they became colonials, when they were in their homeland in Europe, having special needs meant that you were a burden to the person who's already burdened by the oppressor. Okay, those people were living on survival mode. And animals in survival mode, if there's a pup in the litter that cannot survive, they will just toss it out and keep going. No second thoughts. Okay, so those people came over and started colonies all over the globe. Okay? And those people cannot exist with special needs, because to them, special needs is a sign that they are now weakened, and you cannot be weak in an oppressive society. So I need everybody to understand, if you speak English, you have a hard time with existing in a space with people with disabilities. How do I know that? Because I'm a Black woman who sits in difference with people all the time. I used to work at a school with special needs. And so I'm very much well aware of how uncomfortable other people are around children, adults with special needs. I remember when I was in school in Florida, this back in the day, we used to have a kid, he had albinoism, and he also had something going on with his eyes. Don't ask me what it was, but he had this giant fucking computer and shit like that. And most of the kids, if they had to sit next to him or something, you could feel them shaking. They don't know what to do. He's not normal. What the fuck, bitch? He just uses a computer. But that's how most of people in society, especially the deeper and the more you conform into white colonial ideologies, the more you conform in those spaces, somebody with special needs can't conform. So if you're around somebody with special needs, it makes you shake, because now, well, what if people make fun of me? What if I'm not the cool kid? You're already in honors geography. Nobody thinks you're cool. Nobody thinks you're cool. And unfortunately for the high intellect kids, them nerds that ended up in tech and stuff like that, I'm so smart. One day I'll rule over the jocks and the special needs. What do you think the honors class was? Special. It was special. Now, unfortunately for a lot of the techies, I said, the reason why they swing around eugenics all the time, history repeats itself. No, you guys are illiterate. History doesn't just repeat itself. You're functionally illiterate. And by being functionally illiterate, I don't mean that you can't read a book or understand. I mean, you cannot decode and gain, decode, and synthesize information and process that properly. People who don't read books can do that. There's oral literacy, there's text-based literacy, there's symbolic-based literacy. There's many different types of literacy. Being media literate, meaning that you can, no matter the form the information comes to you in, you can decode it. That's a skill. People who are functionally illiterate are in all sorts of places and spaces, but because the general person, that's why I'm talking to you as an individual. How comfortable are you around people with special needs? Do you hyperfixate on them? Do you need to help fix? You start glitching out? Then you're the reason why you're in spaces with people who appear to be functional, but they're actually special needs. You went to Stanford. Most of the kids at Stanford can't read. How do you get into a university that requires you to be text-based literate and you can't read? Easy. Because the people who teach there are also illiterate. The people who run companies, the people in government, they're functionally illiterate. They're all special needs. But because they look here, and here's where Here's where the kicker comes in, okay? If you're uncomfortable around someone with special needs, then you rely on them to pass. That's the conformity aspect. You, as an individual, will force someone, you will turn on your blinders to all their functionally illiterate ass behavior and justify and explain it away just so that you don't have to be in proximity to somebody with special needs. And that's how you get into positions where you're listening to someone tell you to hit the red button, and on the wall it says, only hit the red button if you want to die. And you're like, but I don't want to. And they're like, hit the red button. Don't you understand? Don't you understand? You just need to hit the. And you're like, I feel like you're telling me to do something wrong here. But you're confused. Why are you confused? Because you refuse to see the truth. Because you make being special needs an issue because you were conditioned to. And it benefits people who can mask. And if you speak English, I need you to understand that the culture you participate in, the colonial culture that you participate in, it says that if you can perform a certain behavior, then you're solid, right? If you can assimilate into whatever the propaganda is, then that's functional. That has nothing to do with being functional. Otherwise, I mean, just look at Elon Musk. I mean, his father has told you all that he is functionally special needs. And everyone goes, he's so mean. I understand why he's the way that he is. Yeah, his father's a deadbeat, obviously, terrible. I don't know why you would expect Canadian Nazis to be able to raise a child who has special needs. Think about it. Think about it. Why would you expect Canadian Nazis to raise a child who has special needs properly? Why would you expect that? They were exterminating special needs kids. Why would you expect them to raise him properly? But he has a lot of money, access, and to the tech bros, having money means having bitches. That sounds like a classroom full of illiterate kids, doesn't it? But everybody told themselves, those classrooms only have black kids in it. And so now y'all have no idea that all them black classrooms were filled with black teachers who were teaching their children to be literate, to how to be stoic, so how to emotionally regulate, how to access and gain resources, how to navigate life, how to do X, Y, and Z. There was a hyper focus on that. So all them black kids who everybody thought that they were the ones that, they're the pinnacle of being illiterate. All of them were gaining literacy while y'all were hyperventilating and bootlicking. And I'm talking about over the past 15 years, the idea of the tech bro. And then when the tech bro came out being the way that the tech bro is, and y'all went, wait a minute. Yeah, you're getting the ick because a lot of that ick is how you've been conditioned to express and experience special needs. It's not what you thought it would look like. Yeah. I know that's a real hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, but that's why I'm always telling everybody, your main issue with people is that they're illiterate. And literacy is a skill. It is not a talent. It's not a special thing. Everyone has their own way of decoding and synthesizing information. It's not one size fits all. It's something that you learn about yourself, right? That's in a healthy system. That's why I said the last time this country, America, the land, was able to be around people with special needs and function was when indigenous people were living here by themselves. Because they didn't make it weird. They were just living. But colonial spaces and places where people are in survival mode and they have to fight to be at the top, they make it weird because to them special needs is weakness. You're unable to conform. You're unable to put on a show while you, do your weird shit in the background. Yeah, it's a mess. But yeah. Ask yourself, how are you navigating disability? Are you an ableist? Because I'm telling you, unpack it. Black Feminism by Patricia. Go read it.
A lot of big business owners now, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they have autism. You know, nobody wants to flat out say it, but if you're part computer, part person, that's always what autism was. Autism was that, was Danny Calculator. It was that dude who you would start talking, you would reach out to shake his hand, and he would kind of shake your hand with his eyes. He would like kind of just look at you, look down, look up, look down, look up. Like he was, he's part computer. It's built into him. And those are people that are starting to rule the world because the world is becoming more man and more computer. It's that man, it's that man-puter, that compuman.
When I was in Montessori school, they told my mom that I was problematic because I wouldn't switch tasks. And my teacher would have to pick my whole chair up and move me in my chair to the next task.
I was amazed to find that Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men in the world, says in his quarterly reports, and loves to say in many settings, that he tells all of the thousands of Amazon employees who work under him, he wants them all to wake up terrified every morning. And that's the word he uses, terrified. And to stay terrified all day, because that makes them productive. But most of these people are just getting by financially. He wants them to be afraid all the time so that he and the stockholders can get more stuff. And they already have so much stuff. 50% of the total wealth of the world is owned by the top 1%. It's insane.
You have this very strange phenomenon in Silicon Valley where a number of the more successful people seem to be suffering from a mild form of Asperger's. And I think we always need to flip this around into an indictment of our broader society. And we need to ask the question, what is it about our society where those of us who do not suffer from Asperger's are talked out of our interesting, creative, innovative ideas before they're even fully formed, where we sort of pick up on all these cues from the people around us and notice, oh, that's a little too weird, that's too strange.
The fact that Peter Thiel, the guy who groomed J.D. Vance to be vice president, is in the Epstein files isn't really surprising. But what does surprise me is this conversation between Epstein and Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, where Peter Thiel comes up.
I've never met Peter Thiel. And everybody says he sort of jumps around and acts sort of strange. Like he's on drugs.
Smoking, yeah. He looks still under drugs.
This interview response about the murder of the health insurance CEO might just be the worst media answer I've seen all year.
For those who think this shooter is a hero, what would you say to them?
I don't know what to say. I still think you should try to make an argument, and I think this is there may be things wrong with our healthcare system, but you have to make an argument, and you have to try to find a way to convince people and change it by that. And this is not going to work.
Okay, there's so much wrong with this. First of all, what is Peter Thiel doing speaking to Piers Morgan about this issue? You're supposedly one of the most brilliant thinkers of our time. You've had unparalleled influence in the tech world, and yet you still feel the need to comment on the fact that a bunch of people on social media are simping for a handsome murderer? You gotta know when to engage and when to decline the questions.
This is my very specific question for you, right? Is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress. But I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
To be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe. But is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
Kry ek 'n oproep van die skool en hulle sê ek moet asseblief die hoof kom sien die volgende dag. Ek was bekommerd want ek het geweet dit was natuurlik oor Elon. En toe sê die hoof van my nee, hulle dink Elon is vertraag. Want hy luister nie, hy kyk net uit die venster uit die hele tyd. Toe vra ek hoe sy werk. Hulle sê nee, sy werk is alright. Toe sê ek wel nou was die probleem. Toe vat ek hom uit en toe sit ek hom dan in daai privaat skool en daar was daarna geen probleem.
Actually making history tonight as the first person with Asperger's to host SNL.
I would just tend to take things very literally as just like the words as spoken were exactly what they meant. But then that turned out to be wrong. You can't, they're not simply saying exactly what they mean. There's all sorts of other things that are meant. It took me a while to figure that out. So I was, bullied quite a lot. So I did not have a sort of happy childhood, to be frank. It was quite rough.
Do you know about Elon Musk's grandfather, J.N. Haldeman? Let me tell you a little bit about him. He was born in the US and moved to Canada as a young man, where he worked as a chiropractor. He became involved with an organization called Technocracy Incorporated, which aimed to replace democratically elected representatives with technocrats. In other words, people who would be selected because they had the skills deemed necessary to run the economy properly. This led to him being arrested on the 8th of October 1940 because Technocracy Incorporated had been deemed subversive to Canada's war effort, and he was subsequently fined at trial for writing, publishing or circulating a document titled Statement of Patriotism by those who were technocrats. Just last year, Elon Musk's father, Errol Musk, claimed that his father-in-law, J.N. Haldeman, had sympathized with Nazi Germany during World War II. During that period, Haldeman had given a speech defending a newspaper's decision to publish the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a notorious publication, basically an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory publication, which claimed that international Jewry was aiming to rule the world. He would later claim that apartheid South Africa was leading white Christian civilization against the international conspiracy of Jewish bankers and the, as he put it, hordes of colored people that he claimed that they controlled. In 1950, 2 years after the official start of apartheid, Musk's grandfather relocated the family to apartheid South Africa, where he supported the apartheid government and told the Transvaal newspaper, instead of the government's attitude keeping me out of South Africa, it had precisely the opposite effect. It encouraged me to come and settle here. Remember, the apartheid government was essentially a neo-Nazi organization. It drew inspiration from the Nazis, and many of the members of the National Party who designed apartheid were themselves Nazi sympathizers and Nazi supporters during the Second World War. In 1951, J.N. Haldeman wrote an article for a Saskatchewan newspaper called the Regina Leader Post, in which he defended apartheid and wrote about South Africa. The natives are very primitive and must not be taken seriously. Some are quite clever in a routine job, but the best of them cannot assume responsibility and will abuse authority. The present government of South Africa knows how to handle the native question. In later life, he self-published 2 books alleging international conspiracies. Firstly, the international conspiracy to establish a world dictatorship and the menace to South Africa, and then the international conspiracy in health, which cast suspicion on fluoridation, vaccinations, and health insurance. So yes, you did see what you saw, and yes, It does mean what you think it means. And yes, that runs in this man's genes.
Elon Musk was a lolcow for the pedophilic elite. That's the only way to interpret his emails with Epstein. He was desperately trying to join in the cool kids club and was getting laughed off left and right. So much so to the point where I fully believe he is the one responsible for his disappearance. And when I say disappearance, he's actually in Israel. More stuff that's come out there. There's actual email chains between the two of them with Epstein laughing at Musk, with Epstein inviting him to a party and Musk going, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't give a shit about the UN delegates. I have a rocket launching. And Epstein messaged him back and says, do you think I am the R word? Do you think I'm stupid? I don't mean that I want you to meet these UN delegates, you. And Epstein goes, just kidding, because they think Elon is. They're laughing at him. How many kids did Elon end up with? God, like, weren't 3 of them honeypots, literally? I need to go outside. I need a menthol 1000.
No, look how. Person or group of people laughed at for the actions that they take despite not trying to be funny. They might try to take themselves seriously, but are often milked for laughs with or without their knowledge.
Elon Musk jumping law.
This is what victory feels like. Yeah.
And it goes beyond just the light pollution, because now folks like your boy Elon is launching, and I don't like the fact that they use the word constellation to refer to satellites, because that's my word. That's my people's word. Constellations, they're actual stars,
right?
Not moving hardware. No, we got people talking to people. I
could connect you.
No, we're
just
we're friends. No, we're friends.
You're using the wrong words.
I feel completely at home speaking to. He's on the spectrum a bit. I'd say 1 out of 6 of my colleagues is probably on the autism spectrum. In retrospect, now that I look at, once you learn what the spectrum is, it used to be Asperger's, and then they folded that in. There are colleagues who just would not relate to another person or a camera, but they were great in their lab and in the things. And so you say you're just not socialized. No, there's something else going on.
Can I ask you?
What if Mark Zuckerberg is just autistic? And we're just making fun of his awkwardness, thinking he's not real, but he's actually just severely autistic.
At hand, which is the concerns that have been raised. Need water, okay? Now, as I was saying, there's been a lot of concern about people's private information and how.
You drink coffee, man, or no?
Nah.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you've had it.
I have. Sometimes on vacation, I'll drink it recreationally. Hey everyone, we are live from my backyard where I am smoking a brisket and some ribs. Bother you because you're human, and I was human. I am human still. But I was just referring to myself in the past.
We got one. Mark, are the allegations true that you are secretly a lizard? I'm gonna have to go with no on that. I am not a lizard.
I'm sorry I'm here for someone else. It's good to see your face, and I really hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well.
You've talked about that if you were a kid today, you would probably have a diagnosis of autism. What makes you think that?
Well, the term, particularly when they say on the spectrum, that's gone from being a very narrow thing to now pretty broad. And I was very slow to develop socially, I kind of rock. I concentrate intensely. My teachers were so confused that in the same grade they said put him ahead 1 or 2 grades, and another teacher said push him back 1 or 2 grades. So that was a dilemma. My energy, my obsessions, fortunately, writing software being one of those, so that worked out well for me. Marked me out as a very different kid in terms of my neurological style.
Your ability to focus as a kid and solve problems in your head, that if you write about it, became kind of a superpower.
Absolutely. I wouldn't trade it despite the other limitations that it came with.
And then we have another crazy billionaire, Bill Gates, says there's too many of us. His thing by 2030 is to depopulate the planet. And I just wondered, are we part of the population that he wants to depopulate? Says there's too many of us. And he says it. And people go, it's a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy theory. He f***ing said it. You can go on YouTube. He said Bill Clinton, Bill Gates. I'm sorry, I was thinking about Epstein's Island for a second. So, Bill Gates, you go and see on YouTube. He says one of the goals by 2030 is to lower the population of the planet, and one of the ways to do that is using vaccines. It's like, what? And people go, no, that's a conspiracy theory. So he said it. You can go see. He said, yeah, but it's a conspiracy theory to think, he meant what he said. Says, what? He said it. He meant it. He's doing it. And it's working. And people go, it's a conspiracy theory. What?
The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
More than 11,000 scientists signed a petition calling for population control as a means of combating climate change. In an article published Tuesday in the journal Bioscience, the scientists wrote that planet Earth is, quote, facing a climate emergency. They argued that population control was a necessary response to this emergency, writing, quote, the world population must be stabilized and ideally gradually reduced.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
When our foundation first started up, it was focused on reproductive health. That was the main thing we did because I thought, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face. Well, over this decade, we believe unbelievable progress can be made, both inventing new vaccines and making sure they get out to all the children who need them. The benefits there in terms of reducing sickness, reducing the population growth, it really allows the society a chance to take care of itself once you've made that intervention.
What the developing world does not need is more children.
And I think that was the biggest aha to Bill and me when we got into this work, because we asked ourselves, of course, the same hard-nosed question you'd ask, which is, if you get into this work and you start to save these children, will women just keep overpopulating the world?
Bill Gates said what he said. So if you don't want to get it by now, maybe listen to the fact that he mentioned that his father was a part of Planned Parenthood. If his father was a part of Planned Parenthood, what was the objective of Planned Parenthood? He said his father. And you're talking about in the 30s now. You're talking about someone by the name of Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood. What did she say the purpose was? Margaret Sanger, who was an honorary Klanswoman. Margaret Sanger, who used to give lectures at Klans rallies talking about the population of Negroes and particularly has to be lessened. Margaret Sanger, who said that, quote, Negroes are like human weeds and should be exterminated, end quote. Margaret Sanger, who in a black and white interview with Mike Wallace said, quote, I believe the greatest sin is to bring a child into the world, end quote. And you're saying that the number one problem right now in the world is overpopulation. You are a goddamn lie. You're literally a liar. There's over 196,940,000 square miles of planet Earth, 57,255,000 square miles of land, 139,685,000 square miles of water. Who the hell are you playing with? And you're telling me that 7.7 billion people occupy all of this land? No, we do not.
They scared of you,
You ever
bro.
drove through Texas?
They scared of that.
You can't fool us no more. You ever drove through Texas? You ever drove through Nevada? You ever drove through Oklahoma? How much empty space is out there? We ain't overpopulated. We are densely populated. Too many people are trying to live in a certain place. That's the problem. but there is tons of land, brother, all over this planet. It is plentiful. So knock off the depopulation tactics. And
what is it about?
I just want to say, like, the instinct from the base of the Republican Party on the populist right, that the tech oligarchs are an evil, malevolent force in American society, like, that instinct is correct.
Yes.
I think that they are a malevolent force in the world. I think they are anti-human. I think they are, Naomi Klein said this, and I agree. I think they are anti-creation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they have these bizarre, like, end times cult type fantasies about uploading their consciousness to the cloud.
Yep.
And what did Elon say? We're being used to, like, boot AI. Like, that's their view of the world. And I think they need to be stopped at all costs. And one of the things that has disturbed me the most in this Trump administration is the way that their ideology, through the person of Elon and Doge and how much power and sway he has had in the government, has been quite ascendant in a way that I think is genuinely a threat to people who value humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Watch this. You know, there's this argument that I reject, that black people are less intelligent than white people. It's not true. We know, for example, that if I was in the forest and I had to run from the lion or figure out a way not to be eaten, and my competition is a local African, I'm the one who's getting eaten because they have the intelligence.
Why is he trying to give social justice warrior and still coming across as mad racist? I'm just like, what do you mean? If you went to Africa, the local African would have more fitness than you because you're not used to the environment? That's insane. And what does running away from a lion have to do with different levels of intelligence for Black Americans? But, like, this is why that race science and all this kind of stuff these people are doing, these Elons and these think tanks, and this guy, there's a New York Times article that just came out about this guy from the University of Cleveland, I believe, that was doing, there's a study called the ABCD study that studied children, a lot of whom are minorities, from like from 2000, I think, to now, or to the 2010 until now. And then these race scientists and like alt-right neocon scientists got a hold of it and are using the research without context to make these race science projections and basically say that the reason why Black people are paid less is because our brains are like smaller in kids. And like we just don't have the same capacity for cognition and logic. Basically saying we function at a lower like scale of consciousness than them. It's crazy. It's some crazy shit. And he's basically being like, no, I don't think that. I just think that their consciousness is meant to escape lions in local Africa. What are you saying? I can't take it serious. And these are the people they gave the money to? You get what you fucking pay for, baby. Africa is developed. So if this guy is making decisions that impact global financial and political industries and doesn't know that Africa as a continent is developed, and these are the conversations that he's having, probably much deeper and more blunt with people like Elon and all these other people, like what? These are... Okay.
Hypothetical black racist anthropologist. Chimps and other apes. So this is a list. This is in a book that was never written. Chimps and other apes grow hair all over their bodies. The hairiest people you've ever seen have been white people, with mats of hair across their chests and ascending their backs. Their body hair can even reach upward and out of their shirt collar. Black people do not remotely approximate this level of hairiness. There was no mention of this in any of those books. Distinct from their face, hands, and feet, part the hair of most chimpanzees the way they do to each other when checking for lice, and their skin color is white, not any shade of black or brown. Chimps tend to have big ears relative to their head size. After decades of ear watching, I can attest that the biggest ears I've ever seen on humans have been on white people. Have a look yourself next time you're in a crowded public place. Doubtless there's strong overlap, but the size of black people's ears can be as little as half the size of white people's ears. You might now ask about the famously large ears of President Barack Obama. but he is precisely half white, just as much white as black. So maybe his big ears come from the white half of his family. For most of the 20th century, Neanderthals were portrayed as stupid and brutish. Turns out, beginning in the 1990s, genetic research revealed that Europeans are between 1% and 3% Neanderthal. Africans, 0%. That can't be good for Europeans. Time to clean up that backward primitive image. Since then, published references to Neanderthals instead comment on what must have been their creative, artistic, inventive, and articulate ways, crafting sophisticated tools and technologies to shape their world. Look how easy it is to be racist. Let's continue. Chimpanzees invest quality family time pruning each other's hair. We've all watched them do this. Apparently, the lice they find must be tasty, because whoever plucks them from the other chimp's head also eats them. Ever hear of a lice outbreak among black children? Probably not. White children are 30 times more susceptible to lice infestation than are black children. The parasite simply likes to lay eggs in the hair of chimpanzees and white people more than on the hair of black people. This goes on. This is all and this is over. This could have been included, and they would have said, well, wait a minute, maybe all humans are together and chimps are something completely different. But they didn't go there. Their bias prevented their analysis of information that stares flat into their face. We know that the human species began in Africa, and everybody who populates everywhere else in the world came out of Africa to do that. The genetic diversity is greater than it is between any other two people anywhere else in the world. If you have the most genetic diversity, then in practically every way humans vary, you would find the extreme of that in the African continent. Where would you find the tallest people in the world? Watusi tribe. How about the shortest people in the world?
Pygmies.
The pygmies. How about the fastest people? People of African descent have dominated the long distance as well as the sprint, two completely different physical abilities. How about the smartest person in the world? Africa. And to this day, where they find evidence where that might have been the case, you have people saying aliens did it.
I was just thinking about this guy and the document that I shared with you guys the other day from the evolutionary biologist Trivers, and them talking about transing populations to create novel phenotypes because they're tired of abusing, cis boys and girls. Now they want the trans ones. And of course, I made an episode about this. I'll post it here. The link is in my bio. But in this episode called Peppers and Yams, I talk about how going out of your way to edit humans, and they call them specimens and organisms and all this kind of stuff, is par for the course with these types, because they've been doing it. When I talk about the hysterectomies and the experimentation that goes on at the border, and that they've been doing since the Biden administration, it's quiet, but that's the same as this trans agenda science stuff that they put on the trans community, but is actually coming from up top, which we also called out on the first account. And several people have said this doesn't make sense. Like, if you just listen to trans people, they're like, all this attention doesn't make sense. One of my biggest talking points is there's no reason for 1% of the population to be getting this much hatred and negative attention. It's manufactured. This does not make sense. There is no way that trans people can take up every bathroom, be in every sport. You know what I mean? Like, artificial wombs. Like, there's like, I'm just like, that will never. I'm sorry, that will never happen. That's like a scientific impossibility. They're doing science on vulnerable populations because they can. The same way they experiment on migrant women in cages because they can. I saw a video recently of a black lady saying that the nurses took her baby, lied and said that she smoked marijuana so they could give her black baby experimental milk. because they can do that to black women. That's why understanding race and how race actually functions in society is so important. It's not, oh, you know, you're just an N-word and bananas, magoogaloo. Brrr. It's not about that. We could care less, bitch. It's about systemically being so underprivileged that you have to... It's dark, I'm sorry, and that makes me laugh, but it's about being so systemically underprivileged and down that you have no other choice but to donate your body to science. Henrietta Lacks. Black people going and donating plasma, that being a fucking joke. And blood. Black people having their organs taken, even though they're young and healthy and athletic and vibrant. This is what it's actually about, being a permanent donor body to whites and by extension non-blacks, but now they're coming for the non-blacks as well. See what I'm saying? So when I think about, one second. Okay, sorry. So when I think about this email, and if y'all have access, I have a whole Epstein section in my Discord. The Discord link you can find on my Instagram. Please join. We have really good conversations. We're having another movie night tomorrow. I'm excited to celebrate Black History Month. But when I see things like this, and this is what scientists and thought leaders in their arena are talking about, it just reminds me more of the Tuskegee experiment with syphilis on black people. But now, because they've seen our reaction, because we set the pace like a runner, baby, you understand? Because they saw our reaction and how we got our rights after that, they said, okay, how do we still get vulnerable populations to allow us to experiment on them? Oh, we'll position it as a social good. We'll say that you need this. We'll say that you need this. And not only that, we're going to say that your 3-year-old needs this. And then we're going to say that it's the grown, consenting adults, right, that are happy in their transition and living their own lives. We're going to say that it's them. And not only are we going to say that it's them that want to do this to your children, it's the drag queens as well. Yes. Yes, baby, that's what's going on. That is the subplot. We're going to make you think in the realm of politics that this alt-right crazy stuff is okay and these manifestos are okay and women belong in the game. That came from you. It didn't. And I don't think this signals that, oh, everyone is being puppeted and controlled and da-da. No, because now, if that was the case, this would have never come out. You see what I'm saying? Even though I think this is another form of population and mind control, we can still work with that. It's better than not knowing. I think what it tells us is that we have to investigate every idea thoroughly. No solution worth coming to is going to come to you quickly. You have to really sit down and think. Read this several times and analyze what it is actually saying about trans people. This is medical transphobia. They are trying to create a permanent underclass of trans sex workers for white male use. There's no other way to interpret this. And this was in 2018. What has happened to the trans community in adult films and media representation and all of that since 2018? Maybe you'll listen to them, because I've been trying to tell you. They already did it to the black gays. They already ran through us because they love BBC. I'm sure there's so much black dick in this phone, baby. I promise you.
Y'all, have you heard about the matrix of oppression? Check it. There's 4 pillars of power, right? You've got the structural pillar of power. That's like all the organizations that are keeping us subordinate and holding us down. Like, for instance, why are there just literally more cops in my neighborhood, right? Well, that's because of the disciplinary pillar of power, right? So they make all the rules and the policies that all of these structures enact and do. So they're the ones who are making the rules that, your job is to criminalize all the black people. Low key, that is their job, right? Basically the United States was founded on slavery, which means that economically it doesn't really function well. The capitalism doesn't work unless they're hardcore exploiting a marginalized class, and black people are the most marginalized class, and they just murder us, and then they criminalize us and put us in jails so they can get our labor for free. So anyway, why does that happen though? Why does that make any sense? Because of the hegemonic pillar of power. The hegemonic pillar of power is the one that makes that make sense, right? It's the one that tells you a story that, it's just like a logic that black people are basically criminals, right? So like, should they be in jail? Like why even question it? Like, why even question the fact that officers of the state murder black people at such high rates? Like, isn't it just make sense? That's the hegemonic pillar of power that does that to us, right? That's the thing where we watch the news and they've curated what stories they highlight, but we get an impression, and that impression is the one that underlines, that highlights, that justifies the logics of dominant culture. And of course, the last pillar is the interpersonal pillar, because none of this works without people power. None of this happens without individuals making it happen. And when you're living in the society and you're raised in it, underneath this hegemonic pillar of power, oftentimes you as a member of the marginalized classes are repeating the logics of those who are harming you. You're repeating the lies that justify the harms being done to you, right? So this is the matrix of oppression that we are all inside of, right? So this is my question. Now that we understand that we're inside of the matrix, I wanted to do a quote from the Matrix. "Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. There is no spoon." How do we remake our reality into something that works for us? And how do we begin to recognize the places of society where there is no spoon and we just need to remake everything?
When we say, this country could have learned and fixed and done so much better had it listened to black people, sometimes people get tired of hearing us say that because we say it frequently. But so many situations demand that response that it is frequent because it's warranted. And the one I'm thinking about right now is those files. Because listen, chattel slavery was Epstein Island times 250 years, times millions of people. And when I say people, I mean children. And all the things you're hearing that are trickling out of those files, the trafficking, the disposal of human remains, the ending of child pregnancies, the cannibalism, all that is as American as baseball, apple pies, and George Washington. And it is those type of topics that the country as a whole and individuals refuse to engage with and have for hundreds of years. You can find scholarly information on all those things. And so when you see the now partial outrage about what is trickling out of those files, and I say partial because if we break it down by political party, the one party, they don't care. They don't care at all. And as a matter of fact, I think the number is 26 states that allow child marriages. And you know what those marriages are? Men to girls. Those marriages are women to boys. I mean, maybe there's a couple here or there, but it's men to girls. And so we are in this situation like we are in so many other situations because we have not properly dealt with enslavement, its aftermath, and the institutions and the structures that still exist and the wealth that still exists because of enslavement. And so what we have learned about and are learning about the wealthy and the connected, not just wealthy, but the wealthy and the connected, and all the institutions that have protected them and hidden them and have known about it, but turned a blind eye to it. That's what we've been saying for hundreds of years. So whether it's banking and finance or Wall Street or education or medical or travel or real estate, all those industries turned the same blind eye to everything that was happening to us way back then all the way to now. And so I will say with my full throat, 10 toes down, if America had just listened to black people, even the Epstein thing would not have happened.
So-called white people in America know a version of history. They know a story. They know a narrative that has been carefully crafted to shape how they see themselves, how they see their ancestors, how they see their nations and their place in the world, and how they see everyone else. And this ignorance, this deliberate miseducation that they have imposed upon their own people allows the same crimes to continue. What most white people in America and Europe believe about their history is not history at all. It's mythology, designed to produce a specific kind of person. A person who does not feel guilty, a person who does not feel accountable, a person who does not feel responsible for ever changing anything because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're taught that their ancestors were pioneers, their ancestors were explorers and builders of civilization, that they've brought progress and democracy and enlightenment to the world. They hear about the Renaissance, they hear about the Industrial Revolution, they hear about the Age of Discovery, and so forth and so on. And not about enslavement, not about genocide, not about the theft, not about the destruction that their people are responsible for. They're not taught that their prosperity was built on unimaginable suffering. They're not taught that their systems of government, their financial empires, their very sense of national identity are all rooted in exploitation. They don't know about the crimes. They don't know the real legacy of their people. And so they don't change. They don't have to change because they don't even realize what they need to correct. You know, when we look at colonialism, for example, the history that's taught in Western schools is usually an abstraction. Colonization is framed as something that it just sort of happened a long time ago, you know, something that was maybe unfortunate, but it was inevitable, and ultimately it represented progress, and there were many beneficial things to come from it. Never mind the millions of Africans who died in the Congo Free State under King Leopold. Most white Americans have never heard of them. Never mind the Bengal famine of 1943 when millions of Indians starved to death due to British policies. They don't even know about it. The fact that the American police forces evolved from slave patrols, they don't know about that either. And they're not any more informed about the ongoing crimes, like the pillage of African resources today, the economic neocolonialism that keeps entire regions of the world impoverished, the exploitation of labor in the global south. These aren't relics of history. That's the present day reality of what your people are doing. But the story that the white people are told does not include those realities, or else it packages those realities deceitfully and dishonestly. They package them dishonestly and deceitfully in the past just like they do now. The irony is that when they're confronted with the truth, many of these people will react defensively, you know. I didn't do that. That was in the past. Why should I feel guilty? But this reaction in and of itself reveals how little they're really understanding. It's not about guilt. It's about responsibility. You know, if a person inherits a stolen house, they may not have stolen it themselves, but they still live in it. And if they refuse to acknowledge where that house came from or how it came into their possession, if they insist that that house is rightfully theirs because the crime happened a long time ago, well, then they're complicit because the theft is ongoing. The crime never really stopped. So when people don't know their history, they cannot recognize when history is repeating itself and when history is actually just a continuum into the present. This is why so-called white people in America can watch their government arm and support genocide in Gaza, bomb Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and so on, and actually believe when they say it's for the purpose of security. They don't see the colonial mindset at work. That's why they can see corporations, for example, Western corporations, strip mine Africa for resources and not connect that to the centuries of plunder that came before, which just means that we're not even talking about past crimes. We're talking about ongoing crimes from the past until today. Like I said, it's a continuum. If there's ever going to be any real change, if there's ever going to be any hope for justice, then so-called white people have to actually learn your history. Not the history that makes you feel proud and makes you feel good, that makes you feel comfortable, but real history, the history that makes you uncomfortable, the history that you've denied all this time. And only when white people know their real history, really know it, then maybe they can begin to take the first steps towards repairing the damage that that history caused. The damage that it caused to millions upon millions of people all around the world, including themselves.